In our headlines on this Monday afternoon, July 31st. 7 people are seen to have lost their lives this past Saturday alone here in South Korea, raising the heat-related death toll to at least 10 amid scorching temperatures that look to persist throughout this week. And a historic heat wave grips the US southwest this past weekend, while volatile weather patterns in neighboring China raised the mercury to as high as 52 degrees Celsius in one region and launch a savage storm in another. More than 40 people have been killed and nearly 200 injured in a suspected suicide bomb blast targeting a political rally in northwest Pakistan this past Sunday, fanning fresh fears over terrorism amid the country's general election this year. At least 10 people have lost their lives to brutal heat here in Korea this year. Our Shin Hyun covers this unfortunate reality and more.
As the scorching temperatures continue, the number of deaths from heat-related illnesses is rising, particularly among the elderly. Heatwave alerts were issued across most part of the country over the weekend, as the high in some areas reached almost 39 degrees Celsius. According to the Ministry of Interior and Safety, at least 7 people died on Saturday and more than 70 people suffered heat stroke. The heat-related death toll has now risen to 10 since May 20th, for more than the same period last year. Those who died were mostly people in their 70s or older and were found dead inside greenhouses or on farms in regions where temperatures shot up to daily highs of between 33 and 36 degrees Celsius. More deaths are expected to be reported as data for Sunday is yet to be released. With the number of casualties on the rise, the Ministry of the Interior and Safety ordered local governments and relevant authorities on Sunday to make efforts to implement measures for 3 vulnerable groups during the extreme heat, including elderly farmers, elderly individuals living alone, and outdoor construction workers. It is scheduled to hold an emergency meeting on Monday with relevant authorities to enhance the heatwave response system to prevent heat-related illnesses. Meanwhile, on Sunday evening, heavy rain reaching up to 80 millimeters per hour poured down on some areas of Seoul, causing a temporary halt to subway and train operations. According to railway operator Korail and Seoul Metro, at 6:50 p.m. on Sunday, the operation of subway line number 1 was halted. Trains including KTX services also experienced disruptions. All trains, including on line number 1, resumed operations at 7:15 p.m. after railway safety was confirmed. With the heavy rain alert lifted nationwide, the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters lifted its response level as of 11:30 p.m. Sunday, which had been issued at level 1. It also lowered the National Disaster Alert level from caution to attention. Shin Hyun, Arirang News.
And it appears that other countries in the Northern Hemisphere, including neighboring China as well as the United States, are also seeking to bear the blistering heat and their callous consequences. Our Xavier has the latest.
The intense heat wave globally has impacted countries in a number of ways. Over in the U.S., heat warnings and advisories have been issued throughout the country, affecting a large number of businesses. The state of Texas was particularly hard hit, as the average weekly working hours of workers in small and medium-sized businesses in the tourism, entertainment, and recreation sectors plunged by about 20% from mid-June to mid-July compared to the same period in 2019 to 2022. Analysts say that if the heat wave continues, Texas will face billions of dollars in economic losses. China has also seen volatile weather this summer. Some parts of China, including the Xinjiang region, has seen some of the most brutal summer heat in recent years, reporting temperatures as high as 52 degrees Celsius. China was also slammed by Typhoon Toksuri over the weekend, bringing heavy rainfall to several regions in northern China, including the capital Beijing. The massive storm has resulted in the evacuation of 400,000 people in the Fujian region, with China's weather authorities issuing a red alert for the first time in 12 years. Meanwhile, wildfires that have lasted now for more than 2 weeks in parts of Greece have impacted the tourism industry there. A total of 667 fires broke out across Greece in the past 10 days, an average of more than 60 fires per day. The wildfires this summer were all the more devastating for the country as they occurred during the peak of their summer vacation season. The island of Rhodes, known for its resorts, has been especially hit hard, with 20,000 vacationers evacuating the island earlier this month due to wildfires. With July 2023 already being recorded as the hottest month in human history by the World Meteorological Organization, and August still around the corner, concerns are high as to how much more damage the intense global heat will cause to people and the economy. 이승재, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, leaders in West Africa have given the junta in Niger 7 days to restore democratic rule and reinstate President Mohamed Bazoum. Our Ian Jin covers the conflict there.
Last Wednesday, Niger's first democratically elected president, Mohamed Bazoum, was deposed by members of the country's military. With the country thrown into chaos, an emergency summit of the 15-nation Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, was held in Nigeria on Sunday. Describing the events as a hostage situation and an interruption to a properly elected government, ECOWAS demanded the immediate release and reinstatement of President Bazoum. The ECOWAS bloc not only suspended ties with Niger, but gave the military junta 1 week to cede power, warning that the use of force had been authorized.
In the event the authorities' demands are not met within 1 week, take all measures necessary to restore constitutional order in the Republic of Niger. Such measures may include the use of force.
ECOWAS and the 8-member West African Economic and Monetary Union have declared the closure of borders with Niger, which includes the banning of commercial flights, halting financial transactions, freezing national assets, and ending aid contributions. The military junta's ousting of the president in Niger marks the Sahel region's 7th coup in recent years. The people of Niger remain divided over the military takeover. There are those that stand behind President Bazoum, Niger's first ever democratically elected president, who came to power 2 years ago and is seen as one of the most pro-Western leaders in the Sahel, notably in the fight against Islamist insurgents. And then there are those in support of the coup, voicing discontent against France's interference in Niger's affairs, where, similar to events in neighboring Burkina Faso in September last year following a coup, protesters on the street were seen stomping on and burning French flags. These protesters also shouted support for Russian leader Vladimir Putin. These events coincided with a 2-day Russia-Africa summit in St. Petersburg, during which the Russian president promised the shipment of free grain to 6 African nations as he searches for allies and support against Western sanctions. International organizations are monitoring the situation, with concerns growing that Niger will be added to a growing list of military regimes in West Africa. Ian Jin, Arirang News.
Prime Minister Xavier Bettel from Luxembourg was here in Seoul last week to mark the 70th anniversary of the Korean Armistice Agreement. Now, that being said, my colleague Cho Min-jung took the occasion to engage him in a short talk about his country's ties with South Korea. Do have a listen.
To commemorate the 70th anniversary of the Korean War Armistice Agreement last week, Luxembourg's leader Xavier Bettel visited South Korea together with a 93-year-old Korean War veteran, Leong Moyen. Speaking to Arirang News, Bettel said the anniversary was so important that he, as the head of his country's government, felt the need to come.
So for us it's important, that's the reason why I came myself, also that the Prime Minister was important for myself to be here, and also with a veteran, shows the importance for my country.
7 decades ago, Luxembourg was a country with a population of only around 200,000 people. Despite its small size, the country decided to send 100 combat troops to South Korea, the largest number of troops in terms of ratio to population among countries that fought in the Korean War. The Prime Minister explained that it was a soldier's choice to fight for freedom and democracy.
It was a free choice of young guys, and when I spoke to Mr. Moyen, he told me that it was just a short time after Luxembourg was attacked by the Germans, so he decided to defend, even if it was far away, also democratic values. So that's the reason why he decided to come. It was his choice, but I respect it, and we Luxembourg supported it.
The leader also said the Korean War had never been spoken about in his country as much as it was last week, thanks to his and the veterans' presence at South Korea's commemoration events.
So that's what is good to keep in mind, and not to forget. We have to learn from every conflict, because we always say history has not to repeat, and we see that history is repeating all the time.
And since the war, the Prime Minister said relations between South Korea and Luxembourg have been good and will be developed further.
But we will open an embassy now in Seoul. Maybe Korea will open an embassy in Luxembourg too. That would be next step.
He also looks forward to potential visits to Luxembourg by South Korea's president and veterans minister in the future.
I think this is important because the survivors of the Korean War, 5 are not able to travel, but they would be very happy and moved to see that even if they are not able to travel, they are not forgotten.
Luxembourg's leader stressed that the Korean War has proved South Korea and his country are trusted partners and that even distance doesn't determine the size of friendship. Choi Min-dong, Arirang News.
COVID-19 cases have been rebounding in recent days here in Korea in what appears to be a summer surge sparked by waning immunity and public activity. Our Moon Hae-ryun reports.
COVID-19 is showing a resurgence here in South Korea with the number of cases rising for 4 weeks straight, which could throw a wrench in the government's plans to lower its risk rating. According to data released by the Central Disease Control Headquarters on Sunday, cases rose by more than 35% during the third week of July compared to the week before. Figures for July have shown significant increases week by week, rising from just over 150,000 in the first week to the latest figure of 253,000, meaning that the number of cases has seen a more than 60% rise over 3 weeks. Daily figures are hovering near the 50,000 mark, hitting over 47,000 on July 19th. It's the highest daily tally seen in the country since November last year, when daily figures peaked above 54,000. Experts are saying that the resurgence has been prompted by a number of different factors prompted by the weather, such as more people out and about, less ventilation in buildings with windows tightly shut to keep in the cool air-conditioned air, and fewer people wearing masks due to the heat. The current dominant subvariant of the virus in circulation is XBB 1.5, which was described by the World Health Organization as having an increased risk of transmission and moderate strength of evidence for immune escape. While the vaccine against this new strain is set to be made available in South Korea in October, the low vaccine rates seen last winter among those aged 60 and over, which came to some 34.5%, means that this may not be so effective for herd immunity. The latest data comes as the government announced last Wednesday its plans to lower COVID-19's risk rating on the infectious diseases risk classification scale. Currently, it's ranked Class 2, which is the second highest rating alongside other highly infectious and high-risk diseases like cholera and tuberculosis. The government plans to lower it to the lowest rating at Class 4 as part of the second step in the 3-step endemic roadmap unveiled earlier this year. Being downgraded to Class 4 means that people will no longer have to report to the authorities within 24 hours of testing positive, and the indoor mask mandate at hospitals and nursing homes will be lifted. The Korea Center for Disease Control and Prevention will be monitoring the recent data and holding an advisory committee meeting before it implements the decision early in August. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
In other news, Korea's tax revenue shrank by some $2.5 billion on year last month. According to Seoul's finance ministry on this Monday, June's tax revenue amounted to some $14.5 billion or 18.4 trillion won as revenue from capital gains tax declined. Tax revenue during the first half of this year amounted to roughly $140 billion, down $31 billion on year, the highest on record. Meanwhile, the total tax revenue thus far this year covers just 44.6% of the annual budget, the lowest since data was first compiled back in the year 2000. The ruling People Power Party and the government have vowed to crack down on the piracy of Korean-made cultural content, including music, movies and dramas. After hearing from industry insiders on this Monday, ruling party lawmakers and government officials pledged legislative efforts for punitive measures against illegal streaming, as well as a reward system for related reports. The two sides also spoke of joint efforts with relevant authorities in different countries, including the US, to bolster a global response against piracy and of launching campaigns to encourage respect for copyrighted content. Engineers from Korea and their counterparts in India are working to put in place a convention center in India that paves the path to broader economic initiatives between the two countries and more. Our Lee Kyung-eun explains.
This is a building in its final stages of construction in Dwarka, a satellite city of New Delhi in India. A smart city project driven by the government of India, this is the India International Convention and Expo Center with a total indoor area of 300,000 square meters, that is roughly 40 soccer fields. Upon its completion, the IICC will have 5 large exhibition halls, a multi-purpose convention center holding the largest auditorium in India with a capacity for 6,000 people, as well as multi-purpose arena facilities to hold 20,000 people.
We have completed more than 90% of physical work, and it is expected that by end of August are done already. So now presently we are doing the testing and commissioning of equipment.
Not previously having had an appropriate facility for exhibitions and conventions, India is making full efforts for the successful construction of the IICC. Now, what stands key to the success is the Korea International Exhibition Center, commonly known as KINTEX, the convention exhibition center located in Ilsan in Goyang City, Gyeonggi-do Province. 5 years ago, when the Indian government set out to look for an operator, it chose KINTEX as its operating partner with a 20-year contract. After its completion, India will have the 4th largest exhibition and convention facility in all of Asia.
We are planning a Korea Expo in India for July of next year, which would be a platform for Korean companies in the bio, IT and architecture industries, as well as other K-Wave products to launch in India.
Once K-Exhibition and K-Convention get into full swing in India, small and medium-sized companies in Korea are expected to very quickly dive into the Southwestern Asia market. The India International Convention and Expo Center is set to complete construction and have its official opening in October of this year. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
China's soft power diplomacy includes some of its cutest ambassadors. In fact, South Korea is home to one of them, and my colleague Song Yoo-jin had the pleasure of a meeting, or a seeing to be precise, to take a look.
Black eyes and ears surrounded by a white coat of fur. Fubao, the giant panda, has captured the hearts of people in Korea. It's a regular weekday morning, but minutes after Everland opens its gates, it's packed with people.
When I watch videos of Fubao, she's absolutely adorable and charming.
I feel a deeper affection for her because she's the first panda ever to be born in Korea.
This year, the craze around this 3-year-old panda reached new heights when her zookeeper revealed in May that she'll have to move to China next year. After the news, the average number of daily visitors to Everland during the last week of May rose 20% when compared to the first week. For Fubao's zookeeper tryout program, more than 13,000 people applied for 3 available spots. But why does Fubao have to go to China? That's because all pandas and their offspring legally belong to Beijing. China has been long using pandas as a diplomatic tool.
Panda diplomacy began in 1972 when then Chinese President Mao Zedong gifted 2 pandas to the U.S. after President Nixon's visit to Beijing. Their cuteness sparked a worldwide demand, promoting China to loan pandas to other countries as a way to foster friendly relations.
Current Chinese President Xi Jinping sent Fubao's parents, Aibao and Lebao, to Korea in 2016 when bilateral ties were relatively stable. With the recent strain in relations, some wonder whether Fubao could come to the rescue. China's ambassador to Korea, Xing Haiming, visited Everland and presented a thank you plaque on Fubao's 3rd birthday. This was after his previous controversial remarks about China's rivalry with the U.S., which seemingly targeted the Korean government.
Koreans' affection towards pandas can positively influence their perception of China. Everland's panda videos are going viral on Chinese social media platforms. This could lead to new civilian exchanges and public diplomacy programs, ultimately influencing political and diplomatic relations too.
With negotiations for Fubao's return set to start next month, all eyes are on what decision will be made and how that'll affect Seoul-Beijing ties. 송유진, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Pakistan, at least 44 people have been killed and over 100 wounded in a suicide bombing. The blast took place on Sunday at a political rally in the town of Khar, near the Afghan border. There, over 400 supporters of the Jamiat Ulema Islam Party had gathered for a party convention in the lead-up to elections slated for later this year. Authorities say the bomber detonated the explosives close to the rally stage, near the party's senior leaders. So far, no responsibility for the attack has been claimed, but Islamic State is suspected, as it operates in the bordering Afghanistan and has accused the party of being hypocritical for supporting hostile governments. Last year, IS claimed responsibility for attacks against the party's religious scholars. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that war is returning to Russia. Speaking on Sunday, the leader said it was a, quote, inevitable, natural and absolutely fair process of the conflict. His comments come after an announcement by the Russian Defense Ministry on the same day that it had thwarted an attack by 3 drones. The ministry claimed 1 drone was destroyed in the air, and the remaining 2 were electronically suppressed and crashed into office buildings. Before that, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that he was not opposed to peace talks with Ukraine after being presented with an initiative from African leaders at a summit in St. Petersburg. But Putin added that ceasefire is virtually impossible when Ukraine is on the offensive. 3-time slackline world champion Jan Roos has set a record in Qatar for the world's longest LED slackline walk. Called the Sparkline Challenge, the 31-year-old Estonian walked over 150 meters on a 2.5 centimeter wide LED highline. The line was suspended over 185 meters high across Lusail City's crescent-shaped Katara Towers building. Roos used his time on the line to also perform a variety of tricks, including balancing upside down and lying on his back. And finally, over 150 dogs raced through the Venezuelan capital of Caracas on Sunday to drum up support for animal shelters in the country. Called the Dog Running Race, the second edition of the event saw dogs wearing colorful scarves around their necks cover a distance of 4 kilometers alongside their owners. Economic difficulties in Venezuela, including annual inflation of about 400%, have made basic pet care difficult, leading many to abandon their pets and increasing the burden on shelters. The event charged runners $30 to participate, with proceeds going to pets waiting to be adopted. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The intense heat is still down in Korea with a heat wave warning in place across the peninsula. Afternoon highs are hovering around 35 degrees Celsius this afternoon in most parts. And it comes as no surprise that the number of heat-related illness patients soars during a searing heat wave. The least we could do is to drink plenty of water and close the curtains or blinds if you have windows that face the sun's direction in the morning through afternoon. Well, there was a heavy passing rain Sunday evening, heavy enough for rain alerts to be issued in Seoul and parts of Gyeonggi-do province. And for today, we are expecting another round of passing showers with up to 80 millimeters. Heat should linger even at night. In fact, massive heat waves are being reported across the world. Some areas seeing highs nearing 45 degrees Celsius. Well, can't imagine what they're going through. And it is the hottest time of the year in Korea as well. This week looks to stay hot, so please take well care. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Well, those are the headlines at this hour. We have our panel session coming up right after this break, so do stay with us. Thank you for now.